Before the running, before the missions, before any of it, Jaime Sommers was supposed to be dead. And the man who created her, the one who built her from scratch, was the one who most wanted to keep her that way. By the time we're done here, you'll understand not just what the Bionic Woman became, but why it nearly didn't exist at all. And you'll be left with a question nobody in 1976 asked out loud. What did it cost to let her be the hero they finally allowed her to become? This isn't the clean origin ABC sold you in those opening credits. It's a resurrection that was fought over, a creator who declared her death the better ending, and a woman whose strength was quietly dialed back because the network wasn't sure America was ready for the full version. That tension is the real story underneath the Bionics. It starts not with the Bionics, not with the running, but with a death. Beat 1. The human before the mask. She was not built to be a weapon, and that matters more than it seems at first. Almost every superhero of that era started exceptional already. A billionaire, a scientist, a soldier. Steve Austin, the $6 million man, was a test pilot and an astronaut, practically bred for the extraordinary. Jaime had none of that built-in mythology. She had a backhand, a sun-bleached tennis court, and a life nobody expected to matter to the story at all. Jaime Sommers was a tennis pro from Ojai, California. She was a civilian, an ordinary career, an ordinary town. Her relationship with Steve Austin, the man who would eventually authorize her reconstruction, was a childhood romance that drifted apart the way things do and found its way back. She was warm, funny, grounded in a way the genre rarely rewarded, and that groundedness wasn't an accident. Creator Kenneth Johnson built her as a counterweight. Where Steve Austin was a government asset, a military investment in human form, Jaime Sommers was supposed to be a person, not a project. Someone whose heroism came from who she was, not from chain of command. That distinction matters once you see what happened next. Jaime didn't start as the star of her own show. She started as a guest character, a love interest, in the clinical language of TV production, appearing in a 2-part episode of The $6 Million Man, which had already established itself as one of ABC's most reliable properties. Her function was specific, bounded, and according to the original plan, finite. She was there to give Steve Austin something to lose. That's how Hollywood thought about women in this genre, in this decade. They're the stakes, not the story. Kenneth Johnson worked within that framework and still wrote Jaime with enough dimension that audiences connected to her in ways the network hadn't calculated. She wasn't just a reason for Steve Austin to suffer. She was someone people wanted to spend more time with, someone they wanted to survive. And surviving, it turned out, was not the plan. Beat 2. The wound. Her body rejected the Bionics. That was the story. Jaime Sommers had survived a catastrophic skydiving accident, her parachute failing, the fall that should have killed her instantly, and the OSI rebuilt her the way they'd rebuilt Steve Austin. New legs, new arm, an enhanced ear that could detect sounds no human ear could reach. Then her body said no. The implants began to fail. Blood clots formed. Her brain deteriorated. Steve Austin sat at her bedside and watched the woman he loved disappear. And there was nothing he or his Bionics or the entire apparatus of the OSI could do about it. She died. Steve Austin held her hand, and she died. That was the ending Kenneth Johnson wrote, and the one he believed in. What happened next wasn't a creative decision, it was a business decision, and that distinction is the wound at the center of this whole story. The episode aired. Audiences watched Jaime die. And then something happened that 1976 television wasn't fully prepared for. The audience didn't accept it. Letters, phone calls, the kind of sustained, organized pressure that networks notice. People made it clear, at length, that they were not finished with Jaime Sommers. They wanted her back. ABC heard them. Kenneth Johnson did not want to. His position was principled. Jaime's death was a permanent consequence, not a cliffhanger, not a dramatic pause. It had weight precisely because it was real. Reverse it, and you teach the audience that consequence in this universe is negotiable, that every future threat, every future death means a little less. He wasn't wrong, and that's the uncomfortable part of this. The man fighting to keep Jaime Sommers dead wasn't arguing from indifference. He was arguing from craft. But the audience had already decided. And in television, the audience isn't a creative collaborator. The audience is the employer.
Beat 3. The Choice.
They brought her back in a second two-part episode. The explanation involved a memory wipe, a device that let the production acknowledge the death while sidestepping its permanence. Jamie had been in cryogenic suspension, revived, alive, but she didn't fully remember Steve Austin, didn't fully remember the life she'd lived before the accident. She came back incomplete.
That's worth sitting with. The compromise that allowed her resurrection was itself a kind of wound. The woman audiences had fallen for, warm, grounded, specific, with a history and a relationship, had been partially erased to make the logistics of her survival work. Kenneth Johnson opposed the revival, but was handed a choice that wasn't really a choice. Help shape how Jamie came back, or step away and let someone else do it. He developed the Bionic Woman as its own standalone series, and his fingerprints are all over what followed. The character-driven storytelling, the emotional grounding, Jamie as a full person rather than a government asset. Then the show moved from ABC to NBC, a network dispute over the two Bionic properties, and the landscape shifted again.
The show ran 3 seasons and left a real cultural mark. And underneath every episode ran the original argument. Was bringing her back the creative call or the commercial one? Is there a version of this story where those two things are actually the same? Lindsay Wagner hadn't planned to be here at all, and that detail tends to get lost in the mythology. When she signed on for those $6 Million Man episodes, she'd committed to a limited engagement, a guest arc, not a spin-off series. When audience demand made a full series inevitable, she had to be negotiated back into a role she hadn't originally agreed to inhabit long-term. Her hesitation wasn't disinterest. By all accounts, she cared deeply about the character. It was the hesitation of someone who hadn't planned for this outcome and was now being asked to build a life around it. The show that became one of the defining female-led action series of its decade was built at its foundation on a death that was supposed to stick. A creator who didn't want to continue, and a lead actress who hadn't fully signed up for the full ride. That's not a criticism. That's genuinely a kind of miracle.
Beat 4. The Price.
Here's something the show never announced. A quiet production note that shaped hundreds of scenes across 3 seasons without ever appearing as explicit dialogue. Jamie's bionics were, in raw technical terms, comparable to Steve Austin's. The same legs, the same arm, the same OSI engineering. But on screen, consistently and deliberately, her displays of physical strength were kept more restrained than his. Not for a plot reason, not for a character reason, for a genre reason. The decision, documented in production accounts, was to maintain a more feminine, heroic portrayal. They gave her the same bionics and then told her to use them differently. Here's the part that's genuinely complex, because this wasn't made by people indifferent to Jaime Sommers as a character. The show that resulted was still groundbreaking. It was still the first female-led action series of its kind to achieve that level of cultural reach. Still a generation's introduction to a hero defined by intelligence and emotional courage rather than just physical power. But she was doing it with the volume on her strength turned down. There's the wound again. Kenneth Johnson's argument that Jaime's death should mean something, that consequence should be real, was an argument about respect, about trusting the audience with the hard version. The decision to dial back her power was the opposite impulse, a decision not to fully trust them with the complete version of what a bionic woman could do. The irony is precise and genuinely painful. The show that rewrote what a female hero could be was simultaneously, quietly, limiting what that female hero was allowed to be. Jaime Sommers came back from the dead, and came back slightly smaller than the physics of her own bionics required. Beat 5. The Verdict. When it was over, when the show had run its 3 seasons and the ratings had faded, and NBC had done the math, Kenneth Johnson said something the reunion movie producers clearly did not want to hear. The ending was perfect. He had told the complete story of Jaime Sommers and Steve Austin, and he had no interest in reopening it for additional chapters. He refused involvement in the reunion movies that followed. That stance, a creator declaring his story finished while the commercial machinery tried to extend it, echoes back to the beginning in a way that feels almost too symmetrical to be coincidental. Johnson had wanted Jaime's first death to be final. When it wasn't, when the audience demanded her resurrection, he channeled that energy into something extraordinary. He built her a world, a voice, a set of values that went beyond the bionics. And when the show ended, he drew the line again. This is where it stops. And I am not going to let commercial pressure undo what we built the way it undid the original ending.
He lost the first argument.
He refused to lose the second one.
So here's where this opens up into something genuinely unresolved. The case for Johnson's original position.
He was right. Permanent consequence is the price of dramatic honesty. Jaime's death, had it been allowed to stand, would have been one of the most powerful moments in 1970s television. A genuine loss, earned and real. The resurrection required a memory wipe that fundamentally altered the character. The show that followed, as good as it was built on a foundation that had been compromised before the first episode aired.
The case against that position.
Lindsay Wagner's performance over 3 seasons gave an entire generation of viewers a hero they had never seen before. A woman who led, who solved problems, who carried the weight of classified intelligence operations and still came home to Ojai and coached tennis and cared about the people around her. None of that exists if the original death holds. Every young viewer who needed that character needed her to come back.
Both readings are true at the same time, and that's what makes this case harder than it looks.
Johnson protected the show's integrity. The audience protected the character's future. Neither one was wrong, and neither one got everything they wanted. What's left is a Jaime Sommers who exists because people fought over her on both sides of the camera, a hero built, in part, out of the disagreement itself. Maybe that's the most honest verdict this story can offer. Which version of this story is the heroic one? The creator who maintained the integrity of his vision, twice, and refused to let the machine grind past the ending he believed in? Or the audience, whose love for a character forced a resurrection that, however imperfect the mechanism, gave them something real and lasting and necessary?
And underneath both of those, if Jaime Sommers had been given the full, unrestricted version of her bionic strength, if the decision to moderate her power for a feminine portrayal had never been made, would the show have been more honest or less successful? Or both? She came back from the dead. She ran faster than any human alive. She faced down fembots with metallic faces and a bionic dog at her side.
And she did all of it with the volume on her strength turned down by people who weren't sure the audience was ready. Was Kenneth Johnson the guardian of this character's dignity, or the man who would have erased her before she could become what she needed to be? The tribunal is open. Drop your verdict in the comments. I read them all.